1.
Hello everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I'm pleased this event is going ahead. My particular thanks are extended to Phil for inviting me to participate. Dorwa Nuna Darora Nanawal Yongu Nolawiri Dunamanyin Nunawal Wari Dorora Wari Ningada Dindi Wangarali Jinjin. This is Ngunnawal country. Today I'm here in Ngunnawal country, and I want to acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow intelligence professionals, it's a genuine pleasure to speak to you today. In drawing together participants and perspectives from the public and private sectors, academia and policy, across foreign security, law enforcement, financial and regulatory intelligence spheres, the APO performs an important service to our vocation, and thereby to those we ultimately serve, the people of Australia. A hallmark of the 2017 Independent Review of Australian Intelligence was its firm commitment to the collective benefit of drawing together historically siloed intelligence efforts: offshore, onshore, foreign, security, law enforcement, HUMINT, SIGINT, imagery, all into a national intelligence community. I like to think that this important ongoing work inside government is mirrored and complemented by the APO's efforts in the public realm, including in a forum such as this one. It's doubly a pleasure for me to contribute to this conference because it gives me an opportunity to speak about something very dear to my heart, the unique organisation of which I've been Director General for almost 5 years, the Australian Secret Intelligence Service. And it's a relatively rare opportunity. For good reason, ASIS is never going to be the most high profile of agencies, even in the rarefied context of Australian intelligence. By way of contrast and example, colleagues such as Rachel Noble at ASD, Mike Burgess at ASIO, and Andrew Shearer at ONI have vital roles to play in directly and regularly engaging the public on, for example, matters of information and protective security, on issues like cyber and terrorism, and in Andrew's case, on the intelligence community itself. That's not so readily the case when it comes to ASIS. One of the few things well known about the service is that once upon a time almost no one knew about the service at all. For its first quarter century, the Australian government would, as a matter of policy, refuse to acknowledge even the existence of ASIS. And for the subsequent 35 years, information about the service was very contained. The past decade saw some small but important steps taken to change that historical approach. Beginning with a speech given in 2012 by my predecessor Nick Warner, there's been an appropriately measured but conscious effort to better inform Australians about their secret intelligence service, and occasionally bust some myths. His predecessor and your patron, David Irvin, like many of his predecessors, mainly talked about ASIS behind closed doors in the corridors of power. I should add ASIS and its officers do not seek any form of public recognition. If that's what they want, then they're in the wrong line of work. But without some broader understanding of ASIS, we won't be able to succeed in the mission entrusted to us since 1952. To protect Australia and Australians internationally and advantage our national interests through development and deployment of unique foreign intelligence capabilities. Practically, this means engaging with the public about ASIS as a potential employer or as a customer or as an industry partner, and it means ensuring the maintenance of a robust, informed social licence for the conduct of Australian espionage into the future. As my friend and colleague Richard Moore, Chief of the British Secret Intelligence Service, describes this apparent paradox, we must become more open to stay secret. In that spirit, I will let my guard down momentarily and blow ASIS's proverbial horn on this one occasion. It's our birthday. To be more precise, May 2022 marks the 70th anniversary of this unique Australian institution. In the lead up to and during the anniversary, you will hear a bit more about ASIS, about what we do, why we do it, who we need, and why human intelligence remains a vital part of Australia's statecraft toolkit in the 21st century. And now to turn to the theme of the conference. I'd like to make some observations about the evolution of the intelligence landscape from the perspective of a fundamentally HUMINT service working internationally in the year 2022. I hope you find these 5 observations to be of interest and to be relevant regardless of your particular intelligence background or perspective. Observation 1. Intelligence is in high demand. The need for effective and ambitious national intelligence capabilities has never been more acute for Australia. As the Prime Minister has himself noted, Australia faces its most difficult set of international circumstances since 1942. The world is experiencing more than just a realignment in relative power. The global rules-based order is being challenged, and even with the best national response, the one certainty is that the future will be less advantageous to Australian and allied interests than that we once knew and enjoyed. The world within which Australians seek prosperity, safety and sovereignty will be marked by contest. Manifestations of that competition, already apparent, will be common and simultaneous on many fronts: diplomatic, military, economic and intelligence. The stakes for Australia are especially high. Australia must protect and advance its interests, prudently but determinedly. Key to that prudence will be intelligence advantage. Just as you're aware that intelligence advantage is increasingly key to policing, to management at the border, to the effective regulation of industry and finance, and to the resilience and functioning of critical infrastructure, so too ASIS has to adjust its risk settings to deal with the realities of today and tomorrow. Observation 2. Challenges to intelligence are acute, especially for HUMINT. My second observation is that at the same time the challenge for intelligence services is tougher and the necessity to adapt is more pressing, that doesn't just mean new skills and techniques, it means adaptation, even transformation at all levels of intelligence organisations. For ASIS, our operating environment is now more competitive, challenging, volatile and dangerous. We are facing and adapting to significant risks. Overseas operating environments are increasingly difficult for the conduct of espionage. HUMINT remains a viable and valuable mode of intelligence, but it needs to adapt and be empowered to meet the extraordinary challenges arising from the interaction of a complex strategic environment, intensified counterintelligence contest, and absorb the impact of emerging and emergent technologies. Our approach to engaging with these challenges inside ASIS is a direct reflection of the Australian Government's needs, wants, and approaches to risk and opportunity. Observation 3. The near existential challenge of technology. The third observation is that the technological aspect I mentioned is key. For a service like my own, there is a near existential edge to the technology challenge. Born into the analogue world of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, iterations of the HUMINT discipline throughout the globe focused on mastery over secrecy and misdirection. Adopting the successful obscuring of identities, intentions or actions, spies of the past collected and protected their secrets to empower nation-states. They were pitted against determined adversaries, but by treading carefully and deliberately, they could effectively counter most threats. Today, analog systems and processes have been relegated to history, and we live, of course, in a fundamentally digital era. For HUMINT, it is information technologies designed to store, generate and communicate information that are incredibly transformative and impactful. Relying on secrecy and misdirection to achieve obfuscation only works if another party does not possess and cannot generate access to contradictory insights that reveal the deception. This makes the impact of technology on HUMINT profound and determinative, and the need for appropriate adaptation is vital. There no longer exists a once reliable degree of separation between the human realm and the technical one. Information is now persistent, and fewer resources are actually required to make use of it at scale. Simple items are being reconstituted to perform both their traditional function and to generate and use data. With integrated digital platforms, increasingly more information can be stored, communicated and generated, allowing for improved ease of access, reduced chance of error and greater cross-functional application. Almost all exchanges of value generate and can be seen in data, and the trend is for this to continue. The richness and purity of data today is startling. To take an obvious example, a public transport system need not just generate data about the nameless and faceless passengers who use its services. Increasingly, those passengers can each be individually identifiable, easily corralled into using a data-enabled smart card and providing personal details to register for use. A link to a credit card and a mobile phone number might be just the start of an integrated web that is woven with the simple act of catching a bus. Identity is now almost close to absolute. It is no longer limited to an analogue construct, such as a name and photo on a laminated card, forged at a point in time. It is now a lifetime of existence, of interactions and being, the summation of all data points generated by an individual as required to function in society. While some aspects can continue to be obscured, they can no longer be erased or eliminated in every instance. In addition, it has reached the point where anomalies or inconsistencies can be correlated and flagged. Everyone has to have one identity, but it is no longer sustainably possible to have two. While identity can be curated, there is nothing about it that can be truly manufactured. It is a reflection of the data that exists. Of note in the context of HUMINT's future has been the revolution enabled in some governments exercising centralised and coercive power. Harnessing the booming information technology economy, authoritarian governments have and are developing myriad forms of surveillance and are using them for a range of ends, including public control and counter-espionage. In its peak state, surveillance will constitute the combination of multiple collection or reference nodes and a range of information streams, including globalised data sources, rendering those who intend to defy it potentially helpless. The globalisation of information technology also makes systems of surveillance borderless. The threat is mobile and enduring. However, the emergence of technology to define identity brings many benefits, from convenience to making Australians safer by enhancing the ability of our agencies to detect and respond to crime and a range of other threats. HUMINT needs to be more technologically adept and comfortable, powered by data in decision-making and risk assessment. Furthermore, technology needs to be normalised within the conduct of HUMINT rather than bolted on. Technology will enable the continued success of HUMINT. More specifically, future HUMINT operators and agencies will need to turn the tables by mastering technology to meet a range of functions and requirements. In the HUMINT future, technologies from biotechnology and quantum to encryption and behavioural analysis will be key to success. And at the very edge where technology and users meet, we can even see the outlines of changes to the characteristics of humanity itself, a subject of critical interest to the HUMINT profession. There's a growing body of evidence that the internet, in particular social media, is changing human behaviour and altering the way we think about the world, our place in it and our perception of others. In doing so, technology might even be gently and slowly reforming what it is to be human. Social media is changing the way people receive, recognise and react to information. Long-term studies suggest that social media is substantially altering behaviour, for example by increasing levels of impulsivity and hyperactivity, objectification and narcissism. Understanding this change process is of undeniable importance to those engaged in the conduct of human intelligence. Consider what these changes mean for core HUMINT concepts such as suitability, motivation, validation and control. And consider in turn how this will necessitate changes in security, in policing, and in other forms of enforcement intelligence across the public and private sectors. Observation 4. It's not just a matter of how, the growing importance of what and for whom. My fourth observation goes to a challenge common to all intelligence agencies today: how to remain relevant and valuable. This includes solving the challenge of ensuring that intelligence reporting can effectively inform policy making, including where that policy is being made outside of highly classified systems. Policymakers now have access to an extraordinary array of sources on which to base their assessments, devise their solutions, and implement their decisions. It's a crowded space for policymakers who still only have the same number of hours in their working day. HUMINT will need to provide the gems that reveal the heart of key issues and problems, and do this with increasing speed and fit-for-purpose formats. Changes in information consumption habits will also have inevitable impact. From paper to desktop-based internet viewing to podcasts, consumption preferences are evolving. Scrolling news headlines, Twitter and RSS feeds have had a profound effect on the way many choose to ingest information. These expectations are likely to carry through to work habits and preferences, particularly in younger generations for whom such things are innate. That means critically considering the attributes of contributions, including sovereignty, timeliness, delivering insight, usability, personalisation, that is, how the intelligence is received, availability beyond traditional customers, and integration with other intelligence products. The private sector is increasingly capable of providing relevant intelligence to customers. Within government, we need to differentiate our offerings and evolve to incorporate aspects of the commercial intelligence market into our business model. There are also signs that intelligence is increasingly commoditised. Value distinctions between government and commercial, even classified and unclassified, are increasingly seen as irrelevant to intelligence consumers. The impressive work of non-traditional collectors and analysts like Bellingcat underscores the changes underway. Data exists somewhere on the internet that describes the movements, habits, purchases, travel, communications and identity spanning long into the past of any person of interest. This data is available to anyone who might want to take it or pay for it. Observation 5. It all comes down to people and problem solving. My final observation is that the greatest challenge, but with the greatest prospective reward, is for intelligence agencies to maximise the human capital of their staff, with far-reaching consequences for traditional approaches to training and staffing. Culture is key to such reform. My mantra of the future is a variation on General Gray's oft-cited aphorism about the US Marine Corps. Every ASIS officer is, first and foremost, an intelligence professional conversant with risk, technology literate, a problem solver. Intelligence professionals implicitly understand the nature of the endeavour in which they are engaged. They recognise that it is inherently and highly uncertain, contingent upon myriad technologies, and requires crafting solutions to complex problems. Problem solving lies at the heart of the intelligence profession. As such, it is a universal requirement to have a problem-solving mindset, one that uses imagination and curiosity through a process of invention and discovery to understand and describe a problem in a way that allows it to be solved. Whilst imagination and curiosity are personality traits that cannot be taught, a problem-solving mindset can be fostered. Solving problems that are in fact deliberately placed obstacles requires outthinking the adversary, more skillfully, more imaginatively thinking in ways not readily apparent. This may require coming up with new concepts and terms if existing ones don't seem to fit or make sense when looking at the problem. It follows, therefore, that critical thinking is a foundational skill for all of us. Again, if I might make another military allusion, critical thinking is to intelligence work as marksmanship is to the infantry, a skill that, when practiced, builds confidence and competence, individually and collectively, and provides decisive advantage. A problem-solving mindset also needs to include a willingness to experiment and to fail on the way to success. Intelligence professionals need to be constant innovators, seeking new ways of working to improve both offence and defence. Finally, there's the importance of team. In that regard, I'm reminded of a quote from Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn. No matter how brilliant your mind or strategy, if you're playing a solo game, you'll always lose to a team. That's why domestic and international partnerships and avoiding groupthink are really important aspects of work life in ASIS. To conclude, so these are 5 observations about the evolving intelligence landscape. Intelligence has never been more important for Australia than it is now, and it will only get more important. At the same time, the practice of intelligence is getting harder, especially for those of us conducting human intelligence overseas. Successful adaptation to and mastery of technology is a near existential challenge. But it's not just a matter of how, there's a growing importance of what and for whom. And finally, your people are key. It's not an exhaustive list, but I hope you find it resonates. As such, I'd be most happy to take any of your questions live following this presentation. But before I end, I want to further my comments about teamwork by reflecting quickly on my own team. I've been tremendously fortunate in my professional life, first in the ADF and now with ASIS, to see Australians at their finest. So it would be remiss of me not to make a few comments about opportunities at ASIS. Those opportunities might be for yourself, or they might be for people you know. And opportunity isn't limited to employment. One of the great joys of my job is seeing the mutually valuable relationships we develop with Australian companies and contractors as we seek to work together to solve many of the challenges I've outlined today. For those of you interested in employment, for themselves or for others, I'd make this comment: if you are curious, committed and innovative, then there's a role at ASIS that will suit you. Whether that's in the conduct and planning of or support to intelligence operations, whether it's in development and deployment of technology, or whether it's in the functioning of a high-performance organisation, we can offer the opportunity to broaden your horizons in a supportive working environment characterised by our 3 core values. Strengthen our people united in purpose. Being considered in our actions, undeterred by new horizons. With respect as our foundation and integrity our compass. In addition, ASIS is committed to diversity in all its forms as an organisation. It's fundamental to succeeding in what we achieve for Australia every day. We harness those different perspectives and experiences of our staff to bring true diversity to our thinking and decision making. In short, the ideal ASIS employee could be anyone. We hire Australians from every background and just about any industry or profession. It's just a click on the web page. Thank you for your time today. I'll now join you live for my Q&A portion of the presentation.